Here we are back with our Panelview800 project. This is P1, and just to refresh your memory, we have two screens. We have a main screen, which has nothing on it but a go to config button. And you want one of these somewhere easily accessible. So if you want to go to the configuration for the panel view, you can do that. In other words, you can exit the runtime and go to configuration. Otherwise, you got to jump through some hoops to stop the application. Then we have a go to screen button here to go to the IO screen, which over here is screen number 2. Then on screen number 2, in the lab, I had you do a previous or a go back button. And this button doesn't go to any particular screen. It just goes back to the last screen. I also added, not in the lab project, a go to screen button. So this is a go back one screen, and this is go to a specific screen. This was not in the actual lab project. Then I had a indicator here, a multi-state indicator that indicates the state of input 0. And remember, it was blue if it's 0 and green if it's 1. So blue is off, green is on. And we'll repeat this throughout the lab. The next thing that we want to do is to add an object that interacts with the controller's memory that's not just a read object like the input 00 up there, but a read and a write. Let's add that. Now, you have to be offline to edit your screens. You can't edit your screens when you're online. And you'll know that because if your controllers, remember, you're not online with the panel view. You're online with the controller or not. So if we go to the Micro800 page, right here, we can drag this over to here, and we can see that we don't have we're not connected. See, this says connect, meaning that it's not connected. And if you click here, then it will connect. So we're offline with the Micro800. That's what allows us to access properties and toolbox. So I had you go to the toolbox and select a maintained push button. It could have been either maintained, momentary. It really wouldn't have mattered, but I had you select a maintain. So I'm gonna go to the toolbox, maintain, and I'm going to go over here and drop it next to our two-state multi-state indicator. And I'll just put it right up there next to it just to keep it neat and tidy. Then I had you double-click, change the text to, I'll put 00 for both, change the on color to green. That's traditionally what we have. And then change the on color text from white to black. Then I also had you scroll over and change the font to 28 for both and to change it to bold. Click on our new maintain push button, go to properties, go down to the right tag, and we're going to create a new tag. Now it says tag 4, but that's because it keeps picking the next unused. So I'm going to change that to tag 2 because we only have one tag. And you'll notice that when you create new tags, it just does tag 1, tag 2, tag 3, and so forth. So if you create tag 1, tag 2, tag 3, and you delete tag 2 and 3, the device or the objects off the screen, the tags still stay here. So I deleted them. I changed this to tag 2 to make it look like it would in your program. I'm going to go in here and pick digital output 0, say OK. I'm going to validate, and you see it says does not have a read tag defined on the IO screen. Now in the lab manual, I actually have you do both, but I think what I'm going to do is, since I assign the same tag to both here in the manual, I'm going to go ahead and open up this object again in the properties so it matches what I had you do in the manual. I'll go to the indicator tag and I'll just pick tag 2, which is what I had you do. And I'm going to save this and then validate it. Does not have a read tag defined on the IO screen. Okay, let's go back here and see window. Reset window layout. properties. Looking at the properties again, you see for our output 0, we are writing to output 0 and reading from output 0. And just to make sure that you can see what we're doing, here is output 0 right here. So, and we're disconnected. So I'm going to go online. There's output 0 right here. So I'm going to touch that button on the screen. It turned green. Oh, there's our digital output 0 right there. We're online, see connected. I'm going to touch that button on the screen. It turned green on the screen. The light on the digital field device simulator came on, and you can see right there it's showing logical and physical value. Now, if you don't have a panel view, then you don't even get to see this necessarily because you don't have a screen to download to read, to show this. So I turned on this output from the panel view, not from here. Now, if I toggled this here, it won't even let me do it. I toggled it off, and that turned it off because it's a maintain push button. Where we left this, we have two screens. We have a main screen and two touch things on the screen. One is a go-to config. It allows you to drop out of the run mode for the HMI and go into the configuration mode. The other is a go-to screen button that goes to IO or screen number 2. And remember, we renamed all these things. And then we had a go back to the previous screen button. I added the go-to main screen button, which wasn't in the lab, but is a very practical application. And then we had a two-state multi-state indicator. Remember, when we added it, it was 4 states. Well, you can't represent 4 states with 1 bit. You only got 2 states with 1 bit. So we deleted 2 states, and then we had it in state 0 blue and state 1 green. So it toggles on and off based on the state of that bit in memory, that embedded input 0, which is controlled by the screw terminal. And then we added a maintain push button that writes to tag 0002 and reads the same tag. And that tag number actually points to the embedded output 0 in the controller. So it's maintained. So you touch it and release, it turns on output 0. You touch and release, it turns off output 0. There's no real practical application for this maintain push button. And if you wanted to right now, you could add a momentary button or any of the other types of buttons and read and write to anything that you want, just on your own experiment. What I want to do now is I'm going to go back to tags, and I haven't shown you this before, but double click on tags, and you see we have 2 tags in there, tag 1 and tag 2. So these are created for you whether you like it or not. Now I see I don't have the Micro800 up there, and I'm in the run mode, which means I'm online. So I'm going to drag this over to here and reduce its size to get it up to where I can just see that it's in the runner program mode or offline online. And then I'm going to click here. Now you have to remember the grammar they're using. This one's not bad. It says connected, but it doesn't say touch here to disconnect. It just says connected. If you mouse over, click to disconnect. So I'm going to disconnect there. Now I can see properties and toolbox. Now I'm going to go to tags. And this tag name right here was default. What happens when you start adding stuff on a Panelview800? Now this is not a Panelview Plus. This is a Panelview800. It's also not a component Panelview. It's a Panelview800. It automatically gives the object on the screen a tag name, tag 0001, and sequential up to whatever the maximum is. But you don't have to keep those names because they're non-descriptive. I don't personally like them. They don't tell me anything. But you can see the address that it points to is the embedded input 0 in the controller PLC 1, which we defined earlier when we created the project. So I'm going to rename this N00 and out 00. much more descriptive. And I can add more tags here. So just for grins, I'm going to say add, and I'm going to say IN01 because you will eventually do this. Now see, the data type by default is a 16-bit integer. You don't want that. You want a Boolean for what we're doing. And you want this embedded, you want this the embedded input 1. So we click here, and of course this can be a wrestling match, finding the right tag. And then I left it read write. In some cases you could get away with read only or write, because you see when you drop these down, you got read write or read write. So I'm just leaving them in the default. The only thing I did really was I added this new one, input 1, and pointed it to an address. So I could turn around and do the same thing again, add, call this output 01, Boolean. I just typed in a B and it jumped to Boolean, that's nice. And I want embedded output 1, embedded output 1 right there. And we're done. So that wasn't in the lab in this form. As is my wont, I deviate on occasion from what's in the lab book in the exact sequence that it's in to enhance the whole process. In other words, a lot that's in the manual is obvious. You read it and you get it. If I see some other way to go that's going to give you additional information, I will do that. I reserve the right to do that all the way out through my videos. I want to take you through the lab book so you get everything learned that you need learned, but I'm going to throw in as much as I can otherwise. Let's go back to I/O screen. You see we have an input and an output. Now this is a maintain push button. I'm doing something here that I really don't, is not the way I would normally do it. I would normally make this also a multi-state indicator that shows the state of output 0, output 1, output 2, and so forth. In this case, because it's a maintain push button, I'm going to continue this pattern of a two-state multi-state indicator and maintain push button, because you don't have to control the output from these maintain push buttons, but you could. So in one way of thinking, this could be your manual operation for those outputs, that you can turn them on from the screen. Of course, if your logic says otherwise, it's going to override anything you do from the HMI. But if the output is not being told to be on or told to be off, meaning there's no OTE or unlatch or OTE that is addressing those bits in memory, then you can control the outputs right here from this screen, kind of a quasi-manual mode. So I'm going to duplicate this for a number of inputs and outputs, and then we'll come back to it. I want 8 inputs and at least 6 outputs. As you can see in the manual, input 0 through 7 and output 0 through 5. It's going to be difficult to fit 8 of these multi-state indicators in this space. It might fit, but they don't need to be that big. Typically, I don't make them any taller than need be. I might even make them a little narrower. So the first thing I'm going to do is click on this, go to properties, and I'm going to change this to 40, height of 40, I guess, pixels. And then the width I'm going to drop to 60. And of course that was too narrow. So I kind of experiment. We'll make it 80 and it fits. So we'll do the same thing here, 40 by 80. So we click on that, go to properties, we make it 40 by 80. So you see all of the properties of those screen objects right here. There was our write tag, indicator tag. It reads that bit in memory it writes to output 0, and it reads from output 0. That way, whatever you tell output 0 to be is going to indicate the same thing. This is kind of an unusual application. You could assign this to a function key if you had them. You could enable, well, it is the touch and the indication is true. We put font in here back when we did the configuration. So you see the font is not in here, nor the bold or any of that text information. That was back here. Oh, that's too narrow. So that extra character of OUT, But anyway, here's where I wanted to show you. This is where you change the font by double clicking. But the other properties, so we'll make this 50. Whoops, changed the wrong thing. 40 was good for the height. We want 90. Originally it was 100. Still not wide enough. Well, I guess we're going back to where we were at with 100. By the way, if you accidentally hit the X and you lose your properties tab here, that can happen. Certain situations you can lose this. You simply go to Window, Reset Window Layout, and you'll get your Properties tab and Toolbox tab back up there. Doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen occasionally. So I'm going to leave a little separation between these two. This is not a touchy, but this one is. So I told you I wanted 8 inputs and 6 outputs. I could just do 8 and 8. As a matter of fact, I think I'll do that. Now, originally, I probably had 8 and 6 because of some other controller. But I believe that the Micro800, remember I do these labs with 810, 820, 830, 850, and 870. They all have different amounts of embedded I/O. There's a 24 and a 48 when it comes to the 50 and the 70. So I selected both of those, and I can save myself some trouble if I select them and I go up here. See, it says Align Top. Of course, I clicked on it, nothing moved because they were already aligned. Then I can do a Control-C, Control-V, and drop in another pair. Control-V. Now I have 4 pairs. So rather than do it one pair at a time, I'll just select all 8 objects and go Control-C, Control-V, and drop them in down there. Now I have 8 inputs and 8 outputs, so to speak. Now it's a matter of editing the text. I'm going to do just a couple of them, then I'm going to pause the video, finish them, because you don't need to see this more than once or twice. So double click, 1, double click. I'm doing like 3 clicks there. Everything else stays the same as far as the looks go. This is the appearance or the states. If I want to do the actual connection, then I have to go to properties. But let's make this output 1. Double click, click again until you see the cursor right behind the 0, backspace 1. Backspace 1, okay. Now the reason that one's green instead of blue is because the state that was selected was the green one. If I select the blue one and say okay, so it's going to leave it in whatever state was selected when you finished editing it. I tend to kind of alternate them a little bit just so I can kind of see what they look like. Now I'm going to go to this. Sorry, I'm so used to double clicking on the object, which you would do if this were FactoryTalk View ME. This is not FactoryTalk View ME. This is the Panelview800 in CCW. I have to go to Properties, then I have to go down to Connections. Now it's, oh, look at that. I bumped it and it went to input 1. That was a happy find. Let's, oh, see, I keep double clicking. Go to Properties, go to Indicator Tag, output 1, output 1. And that's all there is. Now, the reason I could go select input 1 and output 1 is because I had already created those over here in tags. If I were to do this directly from the screen, which you can do that, in other words, I can go here, we'll pick this one, and we'll make it 2, input 2, and then we'll go to the properties, and we want this to be 3. Well, there isn't a 3. But I can go New. Now you see I got to name it here. So we'll go Input 2. I'm going to type in B for Boolean. Voila, there it is. Now I know I want Input 2. Let's scroll down to it. Okay, and we're done. Go back to I/O screen. So we have this guy yet to do, to finish the pair. Properties, output 1, because we already created it in the tag database. And we're good. So I'm going to go ahead and do these. You can finish out yours. You don't need 8 outputs. I just found it easier to do all 8 of them. And my controller has, we'll go back to the variables. It looks like I have 12 digital inputs and I have 8 digital outputs. So I have not overextended my welcome between the LC20 and what I'm doing in the screens. Matter of fact, I could go back here and add a few more inputs to show all 12. Here I'm only showing 8. I'd have to add 4 more. Well, 4 more are not going to fit on here with this height and that spacing. I could reduce the spacing and probably pick up enough space for 1, which means I could probably add 3. But to pick up 4 spaces, I would greatly have to reduce the vertical size. And it's not really worth the effort. If you want to do that in your lab project, go ahead and play with that. And basically what you would be doing is you would select these, and then you would use your cursor to go up like that. Okay, the reason I don't like them spaced that close together is because I don't want them touching each other. You can see here the space is a little smaller there than it is there. This is not quite the same size as that. So the resolution of the cursor button is not exactly what I would like. So I'm going to undo both of those and you can play with it yourself. Now, what I did was I just hit the add button a bunch of times. And you see I've already done 3, 4, 5, 6. So I just click there, type in IN06, mouse over here, hit a B, click here, IN07, hit a B, OUT02, hit a B, OUT03, hit a B, and so forth. So you can see I now have IN 0 through 7 and OUT 0 through 6. So I technically have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm missing something. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, I'm missing out 7. So I need to add one more. OUT 07 B. Also, if you click on tag name, you can reverse the alphabetic sequence. So it's in reverse alphabetical order now. Out 7 is the top. If I click on it again, out 7 at the bottom. So once you've got your tags in there, you can click on tag name and you can line them up like this to make them easier to look at. And I can assign the addresses right here too. Now, there's several ways I could do this. I could go up here and select this address, Control C, Control V, double click, drop it down, and select input 3, type in underscore IO underscore EM underscore DI underscore 04, enter. I could type in underscore IO. It takes me to the same place I want. Unfortunately, I don't think it'll stay open like this. And I want input 5, input 6, input 7, output 2. This time I will double click on output 3, double click on output 4, double click on output 5, and so forth. I forgot that the controller I'm working with here, the 820, it doesn't have really 8 outputs. That, if you want to call it the 8th output, is dedicated for, I think, an analog function. So I'm going to delete this one because we can't use it as long as I'm using an 820. Also remember that when I wrote these lab projects, I was probably using an 850 or 870, or I was doing it with the simulator, which is a 48 IO LC50. So we've got our tags all set up there. So I'll kill the tag editor. And now I can, and of course I forgot where I'm at in assigning the tag. So go to properties, read tag, input 0, we want input 3. So I guess I better check to make sure that I did 2 already. I did. See if I did output 2. I didn't. So select 2. Whoops. Select 2. Select 2. And I am going to finish these up while I'm paused. Notice when I mouse over the object, it gives me the pertinent information, the right tag and the indicator tag. So this is output 2, it says out 2. This is output 3, it says output 0, so I haven't done that one yet. So now we have all 8 inputs and all 7 outputs with screen objects that represent them. We had you create another screen and we changed its name to sequence. Then we had you open the I/O screen and create, well, you can copy the previous. Rather than redo the whole thing, you can copy, go back to sequence, and paste. Okay, now I don't want it up there, so I'm going to delete this one because I want you to copy both of these buttons, previous and main screen. So select them like I did by dragging, the mouse through both of them. Control C, go to sequence, Control V. And normally it should put it in the exact same position it was in the previous screen. So now we have a new screen that matches the I/O screen that you can go back or you can go to the main screen. And then I had you rename the screen number 3 to sequence. I had you go back to the I/O screen, pick any of these, Control C, go back to the sequence screen, Control V. I had you edit the text, double click, and this was my first bit for both states. I had you reduce the font for both states down to 14. Rather than make the object bigger for the 28 font, I just make the font 14 to stay in that same space. Because we're just demonstrating something here. This is not practical application. Then I had you create another one, or just with that one selected, Control C, Control V, and put it right next to it, and open it up and make it my second bit. You could also select the whole thing, Control C, select the whole thing, Control V. So pretty much anything you can do in a word processor, you can do in the editors. If it doesn't like it, it's going to let you know. Now, I also, because I copied the first one, they're both 14. That's the advantage of copy and paste. Now, see, that one takes up just a little bit more space because the word second is longer than the word first. So I'm going to reduce the font rather than change the size of the object. It's already selected. Go to Properties, and go to double click to get the states, and then I'm going to put in 13 to see if I can get away with that. A lot of this is experimentation. Nope, it's not going to do that. And I don't like the way it looks anyway, so instead, I'm going to go back there. I'm going to bump the font back up. And instead, what I'm going to do is put an enter there. I don't think it's going to let me do that. Nope. So I'm going to have to extend them. So I'll make the width 85. And now it's fine. So my first bit, my second bit. Now remember, I don't have any tags by that name. So I'm going to select Properties, go to Read Tag, New, B for Boolean, and I'm going to, this address memory location doesn't exist yet in your project, in your controller project. So you could type it in here as long as you do it correctly, and it'll work out in the end. In other words, right now, this HMI could not access that tag, my first bit. So if I type that in here and then I were to download to the panel view, it would say it can't find it. I'm going to anyway, just to demonstrate the point. But you notice I'm not selecting it like I did the others. In other words, I didn't drop down here and select it because it doesn't exist in the controller. So I'm going to add another one, and I'm going to call it my second bit, Boolean. Now remember that these two tags do not exist in the controller. This is the controller tags here. This is the panel view tag. So it's kind of a lookup list or a poll list. And the function inside the Panelview800, when it scans, it when it scans this tag, it scans that address in the controller at this path, PLC1, which we described at an earlier point. So at this point, you're going to return to Lab Project Manual 1 for CCW Micro800, and you're going to continue on where you left, and then you'll come back and continue this lab in the third volume later on. Thank you.